My name is Bernadette, the host of Murderific True Crime Podcast. Murder plus horrific equals murderific. I cover some cases from the state of Maine in the United States and all over the world. Mass murders, domestic abuse, unsolved cases, serial killers, and mostly lesser-known subjects. We don't shy away from the details, but we do that with all respect. This isn't entertainment. These are real people's lives, and I'm here to tell their story. Join me for my Season 5 reboot, and together we will be executing podcasts one crime at a time.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective,
and Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances, and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones, in some cases even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 58, James Daniels. 43-year-old James Daniels was reported missing to the Teton County, Wyoming Sheriff's Office on September 1st, 2021 by his aunt, Mary McNeely. Mary is our guest today. James had been living in the Jackson, Wyoming area. The police report reflects that the deputy taking the report was told that James was troubled. He moved around a lot, had no job, he was known to drink and had a history of drug use. And he was prone to fits of anger, but he had a heart of gold and a new grandson, the son of his son Connor. Mary said it was unusual for James to be out of touch with his family, but no one had heard from him since August 21st. 2 weeks after this report was filed, on September 16th, 2021, Detective Bruce Baumer from the Teton County Sheriff's Office in Jackson called the Yavapai County, Arizona Sheriff's Office and requested that deputies be on the lookout for a James Daniels. Detective Baumer had information that James had last been seen in the area of US 93, near mile marker 164, along the 129-mile stretch of desolate road between Kingman and Wickedburg, Arizona, on August 21st, 2021. Inquiries revealed that the Arizona Department of Public Safety Trooper Goodman was advised of an accident report at 4:09 a.m. on August 22nd, 2021. There were actually 4 911 calls about this same incident. The callers reported seeing a white box truck being left in a roadside ditch at mile marker 164.4. The first caller, a FedEx driver named Dave, reported seeing a truck off the southbound side of the road on Highway 93 at mile marker 164. Dave pulled over because the truck was partially blocking the lane. The driver was sitting on the step of the truck and was shaken up. Dave did not observe any injuries, but the driver was visibly shaken and just kept saying, "I don't believe it, I don't believe it." One of the 911 callers, a woman named Joanna, reported that a box truck was off the road blocking the southbound lane of Highway 93, somewhere around mile marker 165, she thought. She said on the 911 call that there was a man in the middle of the road and he was trying to get hit. I think what she meant was he was going to get hit, not that he was actually trying to. The man was in dark pants with no shirt and he was scary looking, Joanna said. He was standing in the middle of the road with his hands on his hips and didn't move as she drove past. A third 911 caller reporting a box truck off the road at mile marker 165 also reported that the driver was staggering around and looked dazed. He reported that the man's phone was not working. The 911 caller had to drive down the road to get a signal to call police. The final 911 caller, named Melinda, who had her grandchildren in her car with her, reported the truck off the road and a shirtless man standing in the road holding a dog. She pulled over and asked if he was okay, and he told her he was fine, she should mind her business, he was going to walk. This directly from the police report summarizing the 911 call, quote, Melinda told him she would send help and he said, okay, someone else said they would send help too. Melissa said she heard the man say he would be dead by then, and she told him to get out of the middle of the road and sit on the shoulder. None of the 911 callers saw any other people at the scene. All four of the drivers later identified a photo of James Daniels as the man they saw. Trooper Goodman was dispatched at 4:24 a.m. Upon arriving at the scene where the box truck was at 4:49 a.m., Goodman had determined no one was in the truck, and a drive up and down the highway a mile each way located no driver of the vehicle. There was a loose dog in the area, but the trooper was unsuccessful in catching it. Trooper Goodman had the box truck towed to Mike's Pow R Tow Yard in Kingman, Arizona. Records showed that the truck, with Washington tags, was registered to an Anthony D'Annunzio. It was full of personal items, and the keys were in it when it was found. Police notes indicate that the trooper felt it looked as though someone had been trying to turn around and the truck had somehow become stuck. Meanwhile, 6 miles away at mile marker 158, a trailer was sitting on the roadside with a flat tire. It's unclear whether Trooper Goodman noted this or knew at the time that the two vehicles were connected. On August 22nd at 6:06 p.m., right near the trailer at mile marker 158 on Highway 93, a Deputy Hawkins happened to be assisting another motorist when a man named Anthony D'Annunzio pulled up in a Chevy pickup. He told the deputy, here quoting from the police report, that, quote, his trailer had a flat tire and his friend, James Daniels, and his dog Penny should have been with his trailer and his personal belongings. The deputy had not seen anyone around the trailer and told Anthony to go to Congress. Maybe his buddy was there. Anthony went to the Congress gas station. Deputy Hawkins checked in with him later there, and Anthony reported that he couldn't find his friend James, and James had with him in his box truck all his, Anthony's, stuff, including some valuable items. Anthony didn't have any money, so Deputy Hawkins bought him some food and told him to call DPS in the morning if James still hadn't shown up. Note that at this time, Anthony thought that his box truck was missing along with James. He did not know, and it does not appear that anyone in law enforcement put together at this time either, that his truck had been towed away to Kingman on orders of Trooper Goodman. Anthony never found James. James's aunt reported him missing on September 1st. On that same day, Detective Balmer in Teton County interviewed Anthony by phone, and in November, Detective Smith from the YCSO also interviewed him. Anthony's story was consistent. He said James had been helping him move from Nevada to Mississippi. Anthony had purchased a plane ticket for James to join him in Nevada and help him move. With the assistance of their mutual friend Sarah and her boyfriend, they packed up all of Anthony's stuff and hit the road for Mississippi. Anthony drove the box truck, and James was driving a pickup pulling the trailer. The trailer got a flat sometime between 11:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. on August 21st. James suggested that he stay with the stuff so no one could take it, and Anthony go get a new tire. So Anthony unhitched the disabled trailer and left James sitting in the box truck at mile marker 158, while he himself drove the pickup to the closest town, Wickenburg, to get the tire fixed. But Anthony ended up having to stay overnight and sleep in his truck because he could not get a new tire until the morning. He did not call James and tell him this because he said there was no service where the trailer and box truck were. At some point on the day that Anthony left James on the roadside, James got a phone call from a friend and said, "I can't talk, the trailer has a flat." This was the last known contact anyone other than the 911 callers had with James by phone. And note that James was able to receive a call on his phone, so it's not clear why Anthony was under the impression that there was no service. But one of the 911 callers, and possibly more, said the same thing, so we just don't know. When Anthony got a used tire off Craigslist and returned to mile marker 158 the next day, James, Anthony's dog Penny, and the box truck were gone. He told Deputy Hawkins, who happened to be in the area, about this, changed the tire on the trailer, hitched it up, and drove to Congress to try to find James and the rest of his stuff. Reportedly, he spent the night there before giving up and leaving the area. Around this time, his and James's good friend Sarah, who had helped him pack, texted Anthony asking if he made it to Mississippi okay. When she found out the troubles he was having, she suggested that he freshen up and crash for a night at the home of her daughter, Taylor, who lived near Phoenix. Anthony drove to Phoenix and stayed with Taylor for a night before continuing to Holbrook, Arizona, where he sold the trailer cargo and the trailer. So the last anyone knew, James and Penny were on the side of the road at mile marker 158, sitting in the box truck guarding the trailer. When Anthony told his friend Sarah back in Nevada on the phone that he had lost James and the box truck somewhere on Highway 93 in Arizona, Sarah called the authorities in Nevada to report this. But jurisdictional issues resulted in delays. Finally, Sarah posted on Facebook about James being missing, and his Aunt Mary saw the comment. This was the first time the family became aware that James was missing, and that he had last been seen in Arizona. As we said, Mary reported him missing from his current home state of Wyoming on September 1st. Arizona got the call on September 16th, alerting them to the situation. By then, James had been missing for nearly a month. A police drone search of the area near mile marker 164 turned up nothing. Police did look into James's phone records to try to find him. The police report reflects that James's cell phone last pinged at approximately 9:30 GMT on August 22, 2021. The exact location was latitude 32.461162 north and longitude minus 112.98519 west. This places the phone in a 10,000-meter radius near Ajo, Arizona, halfway between Yuma and Tucson. Note that this is 135 miles from Wickenburg, close to the Mexican border. YCSO Detective Smith, who was in charge of this case, notified the Department of Homeland Security in Ajo of James's missing status. They said they would issue a bolo with his photo and check all border crossings. But since the place where the phone pinged was so far from where James was last seen, it's very unclear as to whether this was an anomaly because of the remoteness of the area. On September 23rd, Detective Smith called Mary McNeely and told her that Deputy Hawkins had contact with Anthony on August 22nd, who reported at that time that he had left James and the box truck on Highway 93 at mile marker 158 on the 21st. Anthony's phone records were obtained from Verizon pursuant to a search warrant. They showed that he had called 911 at the following dates and times: August 22nd, 8:58 p.m., August 22nd, 10:36 p.m., August 23rd, 10:16 p.m. But apparently there are no records of 911 calls coming in at the YCSO, Wickenburg PD, or Maricopa County Sheriff's Office at those dates and times. Anthony told Detective Smith that he had tried to call 911 a few times to see whether anyone had assisted James or the box truck. This was borne out by the phone records, as was Anthony's statement that he had not called James or been called by James at all during the night he spent in Wickenburg. Police interviewed Taylor, the friend of Anthony's whom he stayed with overnight after fixing the tire on the trailer. Taylor reported that Anthony turned up at her house filthy, hungry, and exhausted. He told her the whole story about the truck being missing and James and Penny being MIA. Taylor said that when asked why he didn't call 911 to report James missing when he and the truck were gone, Anthony told her that there was meth in the truck and he didn't want to alert the police to it. But it's worth noting that Anthony had informed Deputy Hawkins about the missing man and truck when he saw him on the roadside, and he had tried to call 911 later on the 22nd and 23rd. Anthony admitted in an interview with Detective Smith that he and James had used drugs. He acknowledged meth use on the day before they left Nevada, and possibly the day they left. He couldn't recall for sure. He said during the drive and when he left James by the side of the road, James was acting relatively normal. Anthony said he never saw James using meth during the trip, but he acknowledged that he could have, and Anthony would not necessarily know. Not only that, when pressed, he admitted that there was a bag of meth in the back of the box truck. He said James didn't know it was there, but based on James's strange behavior as reported by the 911 callers, after Anthony left, he could have found it and used it. This was supported by the fact that when police found the box truck, the back was open. Someone had been inside the back of the truck where the meth was located. Anthony said he didn't understand why James had driven the box truck 6 miles down the road when it was James's idea in the first place to stay with the truck and trailer to guard them. For the record, the police notes reflect that Anthony was cooperative with the police, and remember, the witnesses didn't see anyone else when they encountered the man we believe to be James in the roadway. A law enforcement search of the area where James went missing was finally conducted on October 31st. To set the scene, you can look at Google Maps and zoom in on a street view of Highway 93, and all you see on either side is desert. It's desolate and very, very isolated. It is sweltering during the day, especially in August when James went missing, and freezing at night. 17 search and rescue personnel and 2 search dogs poured over the areas surrounding Highway 93 near mile marker 164. The searchers covered the ground both sides of the roadway 100 yards out and 1.5 miles north and south of that spot. Additional search efforts were more concentrated on the immediate surrounding desert near mile marker 164. I'm quoting from the police report here. Quote, "The terrain was rocky desert ground with rolling hills and areas of loose dirt, but mostly hard-packed. There were several areas of sandy washes, and overall the entire area had moderate amount of dense shrubs consisting of cactus, Joshua trees, sticker bushes, and other miscellaneous native vegetation. There were several areas that tracks were located from both game and human. The tracks located were also in various states of weathering from old to new. The reported time frame that James Daniels was last seen in the area was 70 days prior to the search. In this time frame, the area had been contaminated by weather, game and livestock, and foot traffic from initial responders and motorists that stopped along the side of the road. No tracks observed could be positively identified or confirmed to be linked to James Daniels. The certified air scent and human remains detection dogs gave no alerts or showed any interest within the area. A total of 153.5 volunteer hours were expended and 1,737 miles driven. James Daniels was not located, and there were no clues or evidence found that was believed to be linked to this case." That's the end of this segment from the police report. Detectives in Arizona are believed to be continuing to work this case, but the family has not been receiving regular updates. Sarah, James's friend, hired a private investigator to try to look into James's case, using funds collected by James's family and friends via a GoFundMe set up to help in his case. Listeners can find this link and more information about James on the Facebook page set up for him called Finding James Daniels. Penny, a female Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, remains missing as well. It has been almost exactly 1 year since the two were last seen. Mike Morford sat down to talk with James's aunt, Mary McNeely, for Missing Persons. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, Mary, and thank you for coming on Missing Persons to discuss your nephew James's case with us.
I really appreciate your help. I thank you so much for calling.
We're happy to talk with you and spread the word about this case. We're recording this interview just days after the 1-year anniversary of your nephew going missing. His case is really mysterious. It's one of the more mysterious cases we've covered on this show, and I know that his disappearance must have left your family scrambling for answers. Before we get into the details of what happened, can you tell us a little bit about James himself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, James is a wonderful young man. He's 42 now, and he just has the biggest heart. He hasn't had the greatest life, but he's had a troubled life, but he has the biggest heart ever, and it's just so sad that this has happened and that we can't figure out what happened to him.
I know in some of the photos I've seen, he's got like a mohawk. He's in one picture, he's wearing sort of what looks like a kilt. So is it safe to say that he's outgoing? He's not shy. He's a pretty confident person?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He's definitely outgoing, not shy. He definitely is a person who knows who he is and what he wants to represent. I mean, that kilt kind of represents the side of him that comes from the McNeely side, which is my side of the family, being Irish and all. So he likes to represent that, and he was really close to his grandfather, who was my oldest brother. So he's really a good guy. He just has had a troubled life, unfortunately.
Yeah. And can you detail maybe some of the things that he had to overcome, some of the things that he did have trouble with?
Well, I know he had a difficult childhood. His dad died early when he was young, and his dad was actually abusive to his mom, which is my understanding. And he moved around a lot, and he's had a lot of different jobs. He has a son who he loves very much, but he's estranged from, unfortunately. And right before he went missing, he became a grandfather for the first time. So he's just got the biggest heart, though, and I just feel so bad that this has happened and we have no answers.
Was he in a good place when he went missing? What was going on in his life then?
You know, unfortunately, I had not spoken to him in a couple of months, and I know that what occurred is that he had lost his job. He didn't really have a place to live at that time, and his friend had contacted him to see if he could come and help him move from Lake Tahoe to Mississippi. And since he was free, he, went there to help his friend, and then it went south from there.
Oh, and that's a good segue into this, because I think we really have to dive in here because there's a lot to sort of dissect here. Would you walk us up through that whole thing, the whole moving thing that led up to him disappearing, sort of how that unfolded and what the conversation was, how they wound up being out there?
They had his friend Sarah, who initially reported him missing with her boyfriend, was helping them pack up everything in a big box truck. And then they also had a pickup truck with a trailer that they also loaded up, and they were heading from Lake Tahoe to Mississippi. I don't know the route that they initially planned on taking, but they were in Arizona and on August the 21st, and the trailer got a flat tire. And so it was decided, I guess, this is my understanding, it was decided that James would stay back with the trailer and the big box truck while his friend took the other truck and went into Wickenburg, Arizona, to try to get a new tire for the trailer. And I don't know what was decided on, because we didn't really have any contact with him at that time. I know that one of James's friends had called him while he was driving, and James says, "I can't talk right now. I'm driving a truck with the trailer has a flat tire." So he was driving the pickup truck, carrying pulling the trailer. And so that was the last contact anybody had with him that we're aware of. And he was in the middle of nowhere on Highway 93 in Arizona when they broke down, and his friend left him there. And for whatever reason, his friend couldn't find a tire or what happened. He ended up spending the night in his truck and not coming back till the next day. And by that time, my nephew was missing.
So much of this, obviously, we have to go on is from his friend Anthony giving these details. But apparently, you're mentioning he goes back to check on him the next day, and your nephew's nowhere to be found.
Exactly. Yeah. And he was really upset. I don't understand, honestly, why that whole time that my nephew was stuck on that highway, because he must have been there for hours, that there was no police that stopped to ask him, did he need help or what was going on. And from what I understand from the detective that was working on the case, that the truck, finally my nephew, I guess, got tired of waiting, and he tried to drive the big box truck and make a U-turn or something, and the truck got stuck somehow, and it wasn't drivable. And so he was stuck there, and this was like about 3 or so in the morning. And And a first gentleman stopped who was a FedEx driver and saw my nephew sitting like on the back of the truck with Anthony's dog. Anthony had left his dog as well, and her name is Penny. And so he walked up to my nephew to see if he could help him, and all my nephew could say was, "I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this happened." So he wasn't really communicative to this guy who stopped to see if he could help. And so the guy ended up leaving, but he did call it in. Apparently that area where he was at, from my understanding, is that there wasn't good reception for the phones. So the guy had to drive a ways before he could call it in. And I think that's what happened to the next three people who also stopped and saw my nephew, who was now disoriented in the middle of the street. And people stopped to talk to him and see if they could help. And he just was not very communicative. And he said, well, the last person who talked to him, which was, I guess, a grandmother who had her grandkids in the car. Obviously, they're not going to take a disoriented guy who's, acting weird in the highway in their car. But she said she would call the police, and he goes, well, by the time they get here, I'll be dead. So that was very, disheartening that he said that. And then the police finally showed up about 40 minutes later. He was gone. The dog was still there. They tried to get the dog, but the dog ran into the desert and it was dark and he couldn't go after it. And I guess the police officer drove a couple times, like a mile each way to see if he could find my nephew, and he didn't see him. So we don't know what happened.
So there's definitely witnesses that see your nephew, and he's acting from their accounts, maybe like he's got some kind of issue going on. Was that his typical behavior? Does that sound out of character for him?
No, it definitely sounds out of character. I don't know if it could be from heat exhaustion, lack of water or whatever, or honestly, it could be drug related too. I mean, my nephew did have a history of drugs, but not that I am aware of at that time, but it could have been, we just don't know.
Well, you mentioned water too, because we're talking August and this is out in the middle of the desert someplace, I assume, right? So
right.
It could have been very hot. He could have been thirsty. Do you know if he had water and food with him when his friend left him?
I have no idea. Anthony, as far as I know, has not been that forthcoming. I know he did talk to the police and everything, and they interviewed him by phone. But as far as the details as to what James had when he was left there, I really don't know.
Now, you said Anthony hasn't been overly forthcoming. Has he talked about James's attitude and the way he was acting before he left? Was he normal when he left him? Do you know?
I guess so. This is just hearsay to me because it's, it wasn't directed to me, this conversation, but he did say that my nephew acted weird and was talking out of character, but I attribute that to the possibility that maybe they both were doing drugs of some sort. I don't know. I can't say. It's just an assumption that I am making, but he did have problems. And I also understand from other people that know Anthony that he has been known to be very angry. He was angry because he had broken up with his girlfriend at this time that they left, and he wasn't, another friend had helped him one time to move, and the guy ended up walking out of him, from him, because he was so hard to deal with. So I don't know.
So I'm curious, as sort of when this unfolds, he's missing. It's not Anthony that reports him missing. It's this other friend. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. In fact, he might have been found right away if Anthony had said something to somebody. He did say something to the police when he got to the trailer and my nephew was gone, but he didn't go any further in that. He didn't contact any family member or friends of my nephew. It was only Sarah who called him, I think on Monday. I can't be for sure because this happened over the weekend. So I think on Monday she called him to see how they were doing, and that's when Anthony told her that my nephew was missing. So that's like, 2 days later or something, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, so she turns around and decides to go report him missing at that point.
Exactly. So she then tries to report him missing. Unfortunately, where they were at, it was like 3 counties in that area. So each county was pointing at the other county saying, no, you need to report it here. And then the other person would say, no, you need to report it there. And so she couldn't get anybody to help her to report him missing at that time. It took forever for that to happen. And I only found out about it because she did post something on Facebook. And so I contacted her about him being missing. And that's when we all began to try to get this handled, to see what we needed to do. Unfortunately, as far as I know, there's no book for somebody when a family member goes missing. What are you supposed to do? You think you're doing the right thing by calling the police in that area to have them be reported, but we weren't getting any help, or Sarah wasn't getting any real help from anybody. And it took about 2 weeks before they finally told her a family member has to call the state where my nephew is from and report him missing there before they could do anything. And that's where I then reported him missing in Wyoming, Jackson, Wyoming, which is where he was living prior.
Well, that's a lot of time to pass before the police figure out, who's going to look into the case.
Exactly, yeah. To me, that then makes it a cold case. It's like it's in the middle of the desert. They have monsoons out there. So any evidence that might have been on the ground probably blew away. And then it probably took another 2 weeks after Wyoming, the detective in Wyoming was doing his investigation before he got Arizona to pick up the ball and look for him. And then they did send out a drone, which is like a month too late, and they did send out a drone. They didn't see anything. And, I'm sorry, I'm mumbling here. I'm so upset over how this took place, because they would, pick up on leads and stuff, and it would lead nowhere. But it just was ridiculous how long it took for anything to be done. And to just back up a little bit, when I reported it to Wyoming, which was in Jackson, Wyoming, that was at the same time that young woman, the blogger with her boyfriend, had gone missing. And that was in the Wyoming as well. So the detective I was talking to had that case, my nephew's case, and another case where a resident from Wyoming had gone to Arizona to commit suicide, which was unusual to have that many missing persons at in one time in that area. So the blogger was a very high profile case. She ended up being found dead. Her boyfriend had killed her. This probably know the story.
Gabby Petito.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know, if because of that, my nephew was not high profile. He was a young biracial man who was missing. And anyways, it's just very frustrating.
Yeah. So at the very least, it sounds like maybe they were overwhelmed and maybe they didn't put as much time and effort in, and they definitely got a late start working on the case.
Yeah, they definitely got a late start working on it. So, Arizona wasn't that helpful. I mean, I know they tried their best, I guess. It's hard to say because, I'm 71 now and I'm disabled myself. If I had the means or ways, I would have driven to Arizona immediately to handle this, but I couldn't. And when you don't have a family member or somebody right there to really push them to do something, I don't think it gets handled as quickly, because all of this was being done by phone. It being in another state, me being in California, this happening in Arizona, he was living in Wyoming. It just was like, the perfect storm of not being able to get it resolved.
Just to backtrack a little bit too, before we get too far along, this isn't a case where there's no witnesses, which helps a little bit to know that James's state of mind was maybe affected a little bit. I know you mentioned he had a history of drug use, but did he have any history of mental illness or depression or anything like that?
Not that he was diagnosed with that. I mean, I know he had a really difficult time with not being able to, have contact with his son. That really hurt him. He was devastated by that. And then, we found out he had a grandchild, and luckily somehow through social media, he was able to see pictures of his grandchild. But I know that really hurt him deeply. And, he would voice things on Facebook that sounded, like he was really down and everything, but he said he would never kill himself. He would always end with, "I would never kill myself," or something, because it would sound like that's where he was heading, but he would say no, he would never do that.
And moving forward again, when the police finally get there, they start investigating. You mentioned they sent a drone up, things like that. Were there any organized searches or dogs, things like that used?
I believe there were dogs used, but nothing like no volunteers or anything like that that went out to go search for him that I'm aware of. We didn't know really who to contact, and Sarah was in Lake Tahoe. I'm in Orange County, and his mom was in Northern California, and so, we just didn't really know what to do. There's no handbook of how you do this, and we didn't have really the police supporting us saying, "Hey, this might be an option. You might try this." We didn't get any of that or anything.
Now, were there any sightings of your nephew, as far as you know? Any good sightings that may have been him that were reported?
Well, we had, a couple of someone had taken a picture of a guy standing in Arizona wearing a kilt that looks similar to my nephew, but the police did find him and talk to him and verified that it was not him. So they were definitely picking up on the leads that they were being sent and going to do their job, but nobody actually saw my nephew. I mean, there was some reporting that somebody looked like him in a supermarket, and they looked at the surveillance tape that the supermarket had, and it was not him. So they did go to effort to look and see if it was him when they got some sightings. Well, they pinged his phone. His phone actually died, not too long after he went missing, but they pinged it way far away from where he had been. So don't know if that was just an anomaly because of the area that he was in, but it was Anho, I think it was Anho, Arizona,
which I think
where it was pinged.
Yeah, I believe that's 135 miles from Wickenburg. So
it was really far. So don't know how that could have happened.
Yeah, and I guess without being experts on how the phone signal works out in that desert area, kind of hard to say. I am curious about some of those phone clues, though. Was there anything recovered from any of the conversations or text or anything that police were able to find?
It took a long time for them to get the phone information of my nephew's phone. And they did it, I believe, 5 or 7 days of before and after he went missing, 3 days before and a few days after or something like that. And they didn't find anything that wanted any, situation. There wasn't anything that they found that implicated Anthony or anything like that.
Yeah, so a lot of times that's, there's certain clues that, can be revealed on phones, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like that happened. A couple of things that I just wanted to check on. I know you mentioned that Anthony's dog, Penny, they tried to catch it. He ran in the desert. Was the dog seen again any place that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I know that people had checked rescues in the area to see if Penny might have been found, but they couldn't find her as far as I know.
And just listeners out there that may have seen this dog or may be familiar with this dog, she was a female Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
Correct.
Okay. And it's not known if she was chipped or not, microchipped, but she did have hard spots on each ear that were maybe old wounds or just unusual markings. So maybe somebody came across a dog out there like that, and that might be worth reporting if they did. I sort of want to go to the area where this was and really try and hone in. It's tough to try and paint a picture of an area sometimes without having visuals. But this area, we're talking about the mile marker 158. This is where the trailer was. The truck was at mile marker 164, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know if that is exactly 6 miles apart?
I don't really know. I know at the time, the detective in Arizona gave me the coordinates, which I don't know where they are right now, but gave me the coordinates of where the truck was found. The big box truck was found, which they ended up towing away and taking to a, tow place that holds things like this. But I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I know it was Highway 93. It was between Kingman and Wickenburg at that time. I know that Anthony tried to get the tow truck, like could a friend come and get it kind of thing, and they told him no, he would have to come there personally to come and pick it up. So he tried to contact them to do that. I don't know if they looked inside the truck to see if there was any evidence or anything like that. I'm assuming they would, since it was impounded. And as far as I know, it's still there if it hasn't been sold or whatever. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure the mileage on the area.
This is your before and after story. Southeastern College can help you prepare for a secure and fulfilling career in the growing healthcare field. We offer a wide range of careers to choose from. So whether you want to be a medical assistant, medical billing and coding specialist, nurse, surgical technologist, or another healthcare career, we've got you covered. Become a vital part of a healthcare team and make a real difference. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
It seems like at some point a private investigator was hired to look for James, and this investigator was apparently hired by Sarah, who reported your nephew missing. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Do you know the details of why she was the one to hire the investigator?
Yeah, I had already done not GoFundMe, but I had done it on Facebook, getting donations to try and help send somebody to Arizona to, do some investigating, just like a friend of his to see if anything could be done and put posters up. And Sarah actually was the one who ended up going. I collected enough funds for that to occur. And then really the friends of my nephew were really on the bandwagon wanting to get a private investigator. And she was the one that took charge of that. I didn't really have the bandwidth at the time to be able to do that. So she decided to do it. And I guided her as far as, looking for somebody, because I wanted to make sure it was going to be somebody who has experience with this type of incidents, and not just somebody who's following, somebody who's cheating on their wife or whatever. I wanted somebody who would have more ability to investigate this type of situation. So I helped her with that, and she did find somebody that we felt would be good to help with this situation. So I don't know that we've collected enough money, though, to keep the investigation going to the degree that we would like it to go, but we're still working on that. She still has the GoFundMe up on Facebook that people can donate to if they are able to.
Okay, and at the end here, we'll give that out as well and social media and stuff. I'm curious if that investigator was able to find anything of interest that any clues?
I haven't heard anything different. He's basically corroborated, as far as I know, the investigation that the detective did in Arizona. I don't know that he's found any new information that would be beneficial to finding my nephew as of yet. So I haven't heard any news in that regard as of yet.
So where does the case stand now, as far as you know? Are the police still actively looking? Are they keeping up with your family to update you and let you know what's going on?
No, I haven't had any updates from the detective in Arizona at all. In fact, I need to call there and see if he can put out a new poster for that, to get the word out again. I don't know what their protocol is as far as someone who's been missing for a long time, if they keep trying to do things to, find him or not. So I definitely need to do that.
You mentioned the GoFundMe and social media and stuff. What are the places where people can report information if they have it, as far as social media, or learn more about James's case?
Yeah, that on Facebook there is a group that has been put together, and I know it says Finding James Daniels, so they may be able to look it up that way, and that's the GoFundMe page where you can donate money to help, the investigator do their job. And I know there's a group as well that Marshall Lozano has started that has a lot of followers as well, hoping to get some type of information from people who may have been in that area at the time, which would be great if, it was like 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning, but he had been sitting there too earlier before he was in that spot on the road on that same highway. Like, did anybody else see my nephew and the dog and stop to talk to him or whatever? Is there any other eyewitnesses that maybe hasn't come forward? So we're hoping that by getting the word out that maybe more people will come forward and give information that would be beneficial.
Well, we'll definitely include all the social media and stuff in the show so people can find it. Do you know if there's any kind of reward offered in the case?
There is no reward that I'm aware of. I mean, our family honestly doesn't have the means. I mean, if we were to get enough money from GoFundMe, that might be an option to be able to put out a reward for that. That would be, great. So that is a possibility we could do in the future.
Okay. Well,
hopefully near future.
Yeah, hopefully people will contribute to that and allow you to go on with your searching and maybe offer a reward too, because sometimes that helps get people talking. Somebody somewhere may have seen your nephew around the time he went missing, or maybe in the days afterward, and that could be very helpful. So hopefully they do the right thing. I'm curious now. We mentioned at the beginning it's been a year this month basically since he went missing. How hopeful are you and your family that he'll be found, and how do you all stay focused on finding him and keeping up the search for him and getting the word out there?
Yeah, it's been really difficult. It's definitely hard. We are hopeful. We're hoping that maybe he's just somewhere laying low for whatever reason, but we just really can't understand why he wouldn't have contacted somebody by now. It's we're definitely very worried and concerned, and I'm hoping that he didn't just walk off into the desert and die out there. It's been over a year, and we've had no contact. I've tried many times because we used to communicate through Facebook, through Messenger, as far as calling each other. And I still continue to try and do that, hoping that somehow he'll pick up, but it hasn't happened. So we're just praying and hoping that, something will be done one way or the other, that we know what has happened to him. And we definitely hope that he's still alive.
Well, I hope you keep on searching, and I hope that maybe you get the tip and that leads to answers and leads you back to James. And I want to thank you for coming on to discuss his case with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me and getting the word out. His family and friends really appreciate it, and hopefully this will be helpful to the cause.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about missing persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get early access to ad-free episodes of the show and any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with charlieproject.org, the wonderful website that's been sharing information about so many missing persons cases for years. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. And we're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted and edited by Mike Morford, with research and writing by Jessica Betancourt. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.